Before we begin, this story is based on real experiences shared with permission. Details have been changed to protect privacy. While it discusses infidelity, the focus is on healing and empowerment. If you're in a similar situation, resources are linked below. You know that viral tweet, "Karma's a bitch, but she's my best friend"? Let me tell you how my cheating ex-husband made that his personal reality. I should have known something was wrong when Mark started using cologne again. After 10 years of marriage, my husband had settled into the comfortable rhythm of weekend sweatpants and bedtime breath that smelled like mint toothpaste. But suddenly, there he was, spritzing that fancy sandalwood spray every morning, even on days he claimed he was just going to the office. Looking back, the signs were all there. The way he'd smile at his phone screen a little too long, how he'd started calling his coworker Lindsay Lins like they were old college buddies. That one Tuesday when he came home with takeout from my favorite sushi place, except I hadn't told him I was craving sushi. Someone else had. The lipstick was what finally made my stomach drop. A smudge of coral pink on his white dress shirt collar, a shade I'd never worn in my life. When I confronted him, he laughed it off. "Must have been from that client lunch at the Italian place," he said, kissing my forehead like I was being silly. But his eyes darted to the left, the way they always did when he lied. For weeks, I tortured myself checking credit card statements. $58 at a steakhouse on a night he'd told me he was working late. 2 tickets to a comedy show I'd never heard about. Then came the hotel charge, a boutique place downtown with rooftop views. The receipt simply said, "Incidentals." The night I found that receipt, I sat on our bathroom floor clutching my knees, watching the shower steam fog up the mirror where we'd once written 10 years in toothpaste on our anniversary. That's when I heard his phone buzz in the pocket of the jacket hanging on the door. 3 messages from Linz. "Still thinking about last night. Can't wait for Friday. Got us reservations at that new place. P.S. You forgot your toothbrush here again." I stared at our matching his and hers toothbrushes still sitting in the holder. The realization hit me like ice water. My husband had a whole other bathroom routine with someone else. I waited until Sunday morning to confront him. Pancake Sundays had been our tradition since our first apartment, back when we'd use pizza boxes as plates, because we couldn't afford real furniture. The smell of coffee and maple syrup filled the kitchen as I placed the hotel receipt on the table between us. "Explain this," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Mark froze mid-pour, syrup dripping onto the table. His face did this awful twitch before settling into a sigh. Not guilt, resignation. "Sarah, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." My hands shook under the table. "Because right now, it looks like you're cheating on me with Lindsay." The silence stretched so long I could hear the bacon grease popping in the pan. Then he said the words that shattered everything. "I'm in love with her." The syrup bottle slipped from his hand, oozing across our wedding photo on the placemat. Poetic, really. Here's what they don't tell you about heartbreak. It's not the crying that destroys you, it's the mundane details. Watching him pack his gym shoes while listing reasons it wasn't technically cheating. They'd only kissed twice. The way he carefully removed our wedding photos from their frames to take with him for my new place. How he paused at the door, keys jingling, and said, "You'll thank me for this someday." The door clicked shut. I sat there staring at his half-eaten pancakes, the ones I'd made just how he liked them, golden brown with chocolate chips arranged in a smiley face. That's when the numbness wore off. I threw the plate against the wall. Chocolate splattered across our Eastern 2013 kitchen plaque, like blood. Then my phone buzzed. A Facebook notification. "Lindsay Anderson tagged you in a post." My finger hovered, then clicked. There they were, my husband and his girlfriend at some rooftop bar, her arm draped over his shoulder. The caption? When you upgrade from the trial version to the full package, so blessed. I laughed until I choked. Because here's the kicker. She'd used our wedding hashtag. Bless 2013. The first month after Mark left was a blur of takeout containers and unwashed hair. I slept in the guest bedroom because our marital bed smelled like his stupid sandalwood cologne. My phone became my worst enemy, every scroll showing Lindsay's smug posts. Checked soulmates at our favorite vacation spot, better together in front of the restaurant where he'd proposed. Then came the day I broke down in the grocery store. I reached for the maple syrup, the good kind Mark always insisted we buy. And suddenly, I was sobbing in aisle 7, hugging the bottle like a life preserver. A woman with kind eyes and a manager name tag named Claire guided me to the employee break room. "You're the third divorce case I've seen cry over syrup this month," she said, handing me tissues. "First time it's been the organic stuff, though." Her dark humor startled a laugh out of me. Claire became my unlikely savior. She forced me to join her divorce support group at the community center. That's where I met Emma, whose husband had left her for his yoga instructor, and Rachel, whose wife ran off with their marriage counselor. Our little band of broken hearts met every Tuesday, eating stale cookies and comparing horror stories. Meanwhile, Mark and Lindsay were living their best lives. She posted a TikTok of him making her pancakes, my recipe, down to the chocolate chip smiley face. The caption? "When he finally learns to cook for you." The comments section was a graveyard of heart emojis. But here's what social media didn't show. The way Mark's eyes looked dead in every photo. How Lindsay always gripped his arm too tight, like she was afraid he'd vanish. I'd known that man for 15 years. He wore misery like a cheap suit. One rainy Thursday, Claire slid into my usual booth at the diner. "Saw your ex at the store yesterday," she said casually. "He bought 3 family-sized frozen lasagnas and a bottle of antacids." She paused. Funny, Lindsay wasn't with him. I speared a pancake with my fork. For the first time in months, my appetite was coming back. 6 months to the day after Mark left, my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. There he stood, unshaven, wearing the same wrinkled shirt I'd bought him for his birthday, holding a half-dead potted orchid. His eyes were red-rimmed and puffy. "She left me," he croaked before I could speak. I'll admit it, my first reaction wasn't pity. It was the giddy, uncharitable thrill of watching karma work overtime. I stepped aside and let him in, mostly because I wanted to hear every glorious detail. The story spilled out between sips of the coffee I'd made too bitter on purpose. Lindsay had been acting distant for months, working late, texting someone named Jay constantly. Then last week, Mark had walked into their shared office to find her straddling their new VP on his desk. "The worst part?" Mark's voice cracked. "She said I should understand since we started the same way." I nearly choked on my coffee. The poetic justice was almost too perfect. Mark reached for my hand. "Sarah, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I never stopped loving you." That's when I noticed it. The tan line where his wedding ring used to be was finally fading. I pulled my hand back and walked to the mantel, where our divorce papers sat signed and ready. "You're right," I said calmly. "You did make a mistake. Several, actually." I handed him the papers. But coming here today, that wasn't one of them. Because now I get to watch you walk away for the last time. As he left, I texted Claire just one word. "Lasagna." She replied instantly. "Told you. Meet at the diner in 20. Pancakes are on me." 1 year later, I ran into Mark at the grocery store. I was reaching for the good maple syrup when I spotted him in the frozen aisle, alone, staring at the family-sized lasagnas like they held the meaning of life. He looked smaller somehow, the cocky swagger gone from his shoulders. When he saw me, his eyes dropped to my left hand, where a new ring glittered. "You're engaged?" The hurt in his voice was almost comical. "Not engaged," I corrected. "Promoted." I flashed the ring, a vintage piece I'd bought myself after my bakery's grand opening. The local paper had called it the best damn pancakes in the state. Mark opened his mouth, probably to say something selfish, when my phone buzzed. A text from Jake, the chef I'd been dating. "Got blueberry compote simmering for tomorrow's brunch shift. Need me to pick up more syrup?" I held up the bottle in answer to both men. "Turns out the secret wasn't the recipe," I said, walking past Mark for the last time. "It was who you shared it with." Outside, the sun warmed my face as I loaded groceries into my car, the one I'd bought with my bakery's profits, the one with the license plate that read Pancake, the one with no trace of sandalwood cologne anywhere. Want more karma stories? Watch how Rachel got her cheating wife fired next.